In the quiet, unassuming village of Willow Creek, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, life moved at a pace dictated by tradition and the seasons. The village, home to about 300 souls, was a place where everyone knew everyone else, and the rhythms of daily life were as predictable as the sunrise. But on the morning of June 27th, there was a palpable tension in the air, a mixture of excitement and unease that seemed to cling to the villagers like the morning dew. The children, oblivious to the gravity of the day, had already begun their task, gathering stones from the creek bed and piling them in the center of the square. Their laughter rang out, sharp and clear, a stark contrast to the somber expressions of the adults who began to gather around them. The annual lottery was about to begin, a ritual as old as the village itself, believed to ensure a bountiful harvest. Old Man Warner, the oldest resident of Willow Creek, stood at the edge of the crowd, his gnarled hands resting on his cane. He muttered the old proverb under his breath, "Lottery in June, corn be heavy soon," as if to reassure himself and those around him that the tradition was still necessary. But not everyone was convinced. Whispers had been circulating for weeks about neighboring villages that had abandoned the lottery altogether. Some of the younger villagers, emboldened by these rumors, had begun to question the necessity of the ritual. "Why do we still do this?" they asked. "It's barbaric. There's no proof it even works." But the older generation, led by Old Man Warner, was quick to shut down such talk. "It's always been done," they said. "We can't just stop because a few people are uncomfortable." The preparations for the lottery had begun the night before, as they always did. Mr. Summers, the coal merchant, and Mr. Graves, the postmaster, had spent hours in the back room of the general store, drawing up a list of all the families in the village. Each family was represented by a single slip of paper, carefully folded and placed in the old black wooden box that had been used for generations. The box, its surface stained and worn with age, was kept under lock and key in Mr. Summers' office until the moment of the drawing. As the villagers gathered in the square, Mr. Summers and Mr. Graves carried the box to the center and placed it on a wooden stool. The crowd fell silent as Mr. Summers began to call out the names of the families, one by one. Each head of household stepped forward, drew a slip of paper from the box, and returned to their place, clutching the slip tightly in their hand. The tension in the air was almost unbearable as the drawing progressed. Families exchanged nervous glances, and a few of the younger children, sensing the anxiety of their parents, began to cry. When the last name had been called, Mr. Summers instructed the villagers to open their slips. A collective sigh of relief swept through the crowd as one by one, the slips were revealed to be blank. All except one. Bill Hutchinson stood frozen in place, his face pale as he stared at the slip of paper in his hand. It was marked with a single black dot. His wife, Tessie, let out a cry of protest. "It's not fair," she shouted, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "He didn't have enough time to choose. You rushed him." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The rules of the lottery were clear, and there was no room for debate. Since the Hutchinson family consisted of only one household, the second drawing was skipped, and the final round began. Mr. Summers placed 5 slips of paper into the box, one for each member of the Hutchinson family. One by one, they stepped forward and drew their slips. Tessie was the last to draw. Her hands shook as she unfolded the slip of paper, and when she saw the black dot, she let out a scream that echoed through the square. "No. This isn't right. It's not fair." But the villagers had already begun to move, their faces set in grim determination. The children, who had been playing with the stones just moments before, now stood silently, their small hands clutching the smooth, cold rocks. Tessie's young son, Davy, looked up at his mother with wide, frightened eyes, but he did not drop the stone he held. As the first stone struck Tessie's shoulder, she turned and tried to run, but the crowd closed in around her, cutting off any escape. The stones came faster now, striking her arms, her legs, her back. She fell to her knees, her screams turning to sobs as the villagers continued the grim task. Old Man Warner stood at the edge of the crowd, his face impassive, as the stones rained down on Tessie until she lay still, her body broken and lifeless. The villagers stood in silence for a moment, their breathing heavy, their hands stained with dust and blood. Then, as if waking from a nightmare, they began to disperse, returning to their homes and their daily lives. The square was empty once more, save for the pile of stones and the body of Tessie Hutchinson, a stark reminder of the price they had paid for tradition. And as the sun set over Willow Creek, the villagers tried to convince themselves that the lottery had been necessary, that it would ensure a good harvest and a prosperous year. But deep down, in the darkest corners of their hearts, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly, horribly wrong.